Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Onward. Onward is kind of a good example of the issues with modern Pixar. It is trying to showcase a different director outside of the usual and sturdy brain trust. It is a non-franchise picture, and it is also far more complicated than their usual easy to go down kind of concept movies are. This movie is not easy to explain. You have to first go into the initial setup of the film, which is basically the setup of Bright, where you have a former magical fantasy-based society that has grown into more of a modern one. So you have that. You have two brothers who have a staff to kind of bring back the father who they never knew because he died before they were born, and they have to, because they blew up the thing that brought him back, so they only have the bottom half of him, so they have to go find this new thing and go on this quest to kind of reintroduce themselves back into the magical society that their modern society has rejected, while also find a way to see their father for just one day, and his time is running out and they only have the bottom half and all these things, and it's just too much setup. It's too much to explain. To most people, it's like that fantasy movie or whatever with the voices of Tom Holland and Chris Pratt, which also doesn't actually sound like Pixar. Sounds like I'm talking about a DreamWorks movie or something. It just sort of doesn't measure up. And they're using a director, Dan Scanlon, who previously directed Monsters University. He's probably one of the few Pixar directors who's done something outside of the brain trust, who's really gotten to direct many movies and been embraced so fully by the studio. But often what happens with studios that start with a bunch of auteurs, which very much Pixar did, they don't manage to be able to do that with the next generation, and it's very hard to do that. Studio Ghibli didn't. Hell, United Artists didn't do that when it started with Charlie Chaplin and all those guys. So I think the idea that Pixar would somehow find a way to do it is a bit laughable, but you could also say maybe these new directors will find different ways to do it. And what they're doing here, which is basically taking this concept, which we've already seen in Bright, feels like a really kind of cliched plotline. I can't think of too many movies who have done it other than Bright, for example, but it doesn't feel like the most original plotline in the world. Anyway, I don't know why people think this is such an amazing concept in itself, that we have multiple pretty largely released films by major studios with big stars in them to have this concept so close together. I don't get that, but whatever. This one is a lot better at it. And although this story is overly complicated, not really feeling like Pixar, and is selling on 2 stars charisma, if you can call them movie stars in our current climate, but whatever. This still is told in a way that you can tell it is Pixar. It's the best version of fairy tale in a modern era that I've ever seen, frankly. And Pixar is still the best one at doing that. It shows their strengths as storytellers, because as much as this film really doesn't work at times at the beginning, they bring it home in such a way that I can see people leaving and go I actually really like that. That was really good. I definitely cried at the end. It was very moving. It was very emotional. They know how to stick the landing, and they're a very good studio at that. They have solid storytellers. Even their worst, I think Cars 2 is considered the worst one, but even, I never saw that one, but most of the other ones, I'd say even their worst is probably better than some other animation studios' best. And I think the problem with Onward is it's carrying on way too much. And for a studio that's used to, in terms of its storytelling, in terms of its brain trust, doing more of a simple kind of a setup where it's robot in post-apocalyptic wasteland is trying to find his true love, and they kind of go into more things as it goes on with that. With an Andrew Stanton film or with a Brad Bird movie, you take on these concepts as it goes, but this film feels like it hits all of it at once at the beginning, so you're not seeing the larger world of it as the film goes on. You're seeing more characters or whatever, but that's not a larger world, but you're getting the concepts of it right away. You get okay, here's the world we live in. It used to be magical, but then everyone's magic takes too long, so now we have electricity. And I'm okay, I love your Luddite fantasy you got going on Onward. It's a little lame, but it's also okay, that's at least refreshing, I guess. It's better explained than Bright, frankly. And Homeward, I'm assuming, which I didn't see. You have that set up, and then you go into the dad thing, and then you go into Ian's whole thing, and then you have to get into, we have this staff, I forgot, you're supposed to get this from your dad, and then you get the staff, and then they screw that up, and then they go on the quest because the brother likes the old ways and is really interested and is like a history buff because he plays some weird D&D type thing, which now D&D is like Civil War reenacting. It's not like D&D in this world, which that's a whole thing. They don't really fully explain that well. He's just like a heavy metal nerd, but I'm like, he wouldn't be a heavy metal nerd, but whatever, that's a whole other. They do kind of push all these things in at once, and I don't know necessarily how you would tell the story a different way. I'm sure they just like were pulling their hair out, like, maybe why did we do this? Most studios, I think, would fall completely beneath this sort of thing, and I think it probably says more about the strength of Pixar as a studio that they are able to sort of get this movie to work in spite of itself. Netflix, which has very little oversight, that's pretty much why Bright happened. But Pixar, it seems like, really labors over these films, and you can definitely tell that. And I was surprised by how much, in the end, I really liked this film and how it was able to kind of use this messy beginning with all these different things going on to really kind of tell a good story. It's almost like you kind of wanted the quote unquote, I don't really believe in acts, and there's 3-act structures like a lie anyway. I'm not going to get into that. But the kind of theoretical, I guess, second act you kind of want, because you want some time to sort of breathe with these characters without having like all these various like plot setups and all this nonsense happening at the beginning. You want that as an audience because you almost like want to fall in love with these characters, and this film is sort of interested in that. The Ian character, it doesn't really give you as much time with the Barley character, but that it does in the end, which it definitely needs considering other parts in it. But yeah, and the whole thing with the dad is weird. Like do you really want your dad's bottom half? Like, that's strange to me. That seems like a very like kind of weird cult movie thing. It doesn't feel like a mainstream movie thing. They don't really do any weird cult stuff with it. Why would you have the bottom half, like, and no fart jokes? All the guy is a dad with legs. There's gotta be some farting in there. I don't know. It was just, anyway, sorry, that's stupid. I like the performances by Tom Holland and Chris Pratt, who obviously already have charisma, as we saw in Infinity War. I'm kind of surprised that Pixar is doing this, but this feels very late era Pixar in that it feels like something that probably, in a lot of cases throughout the beginning of the film, could be made at either Illumination or Blue Sky or DreamWorks. It doesn't feel like something that's a Pixar movie. And in a lot of ways, that definitely, on a marketing perspective, cheapens the brand. No animation studio thinks of their legacy in terms of buying up directors and producers. Like, they didn't go after Lord and Miller or Genndy Tartakovsky or have Craig McCracken doing features or, any of the major animation creators that you could think of that could probably make the new school of Pixar amazing. Like, they kept the in-house thing going. But unfortunately, like, I don't have that same respect for Dan Scanlon. This is a lot better than his previous film he directed for them, Monsters University, which I didn't really like at all. Or it was, I don't know, I saw it once and it's like, whatever. But this has definitely more promise to it, but he's not like a really amazing animation director. Like, he just like picks too much. Like, I just really wish he would like be more of an economical storyteller, which I think earlier Pixar was, and I don't really get from this movie at all. It's just like too much going on, and like, I don't get the fascination with the fantasy real world thing. It doesn't like blow my mind. I don't find it very interesting. I sort of like what they do with the unicorns and make unicorns rats. Like, that's kind of funny. They do some funny things. What are they really saying with like, oh, these fantasy creatures are like going to become fantasy creatures again? They've just kind of done that with like the few people they interact with rather than changing the world, which I sort of like that idea. But at the same time, like, what are they really saying with that? I don't think they really know, but I think they do know the characters, and the characters of the brothers, they actually understood that relationship very well. And I'd say as much nonsense is flying around this movie all the time, the core relationship of this movie is about the two brothers. And if that doesn't work, this movie falls apart. But this movie has a really good core to it. And sure, the plotline with the mom doesn't really like work entirely, and the whole thing with the stepdad and all these other things, like, you probably should have just stayed to the two brothers. But because that relationship is so strong, this movie like sort of works in spite of itself. And Pixar was able to do that. I don't think Dan Scanlon is the kind of director. He just feels like a Disney animation studio director, but he's at Pixar. And that doesn't sound like that exciting. He's not a terribly exciting one. I don't think we're going to get a real auteur thing. He's not going to be Pete Docter. He's not really that guy. And I kind of question like why they are pushing him to be this kind of person. Obviously this is more of something he originally developed. It's not a sequel or something. But I know they need to develop new people. But I feel like if this is where they're going with this, I question kind of where this studio's going with this movie. I kind of thought when I saw The Good Dinosaur, which this film's getting compared to, because it's directed by someone who's not part of the Pixar brain trust and it's not doing well, that film would do better with future generations. Like, they would fall in love with Good Dinosaur more than we would. I've noticed that that is not true about Good Dinosaur. I kind of think it could be a little more true with Onward, but I don't think it is going to live on as much as their other stuff. I think kids will be like, I like Onward more than people talk about, mainly because of the ending, because it is emotional. It does pack that sort of like Pixar wallop and so forth. I can actually see that because it does really win you over as it goes on. And that's a hard thing for a film, especially one that has so much weight to it at the beginning, can really do. That is an impressive thing. And it does show the power of Pixar that they are able to get just a film that is actually pretty decent with this setup. But it's probably, you know, if we're being honest, it's definitely bottom tier Pixar. It's probably just a better bottom tier Pixar than most. And that's sort of like what really works about it, because bottom tier Pixar is still really good. And Pixar, in terms of studio, never gets that bad. But if this is the kind of quality they're going to be churning out regularly, I don't know if I'm going to be the huge fan I have been ever since they've started and continue to be, if this is the kind of quality, because it's still good. It still made me cry. I still got into it in certain points, but a lot of it I was sort of like wondering where it was going, what the motivation was. Why are they doing this right now? Like, I wasn't really into it in certain places. It's a weird narrative arc because as an audience member, I really felt like the few people who were in the theater weren't really into it until towards the end. And that's an amazing hat trick to do. But as you're watching it as an audience member, you do sort of feel like there was definitely something about it that works, but it's like so hard to find that in this. And having a hard time to find that in a Pixar movie is definitely disappointing, and it doesn't say a lot for my faith in this studio. And it doesn't really make me have a lot of high hopes for them and this director, really. And so I kind of just leave Onward going like, that was fine, that was fun, it is a good animated movie. And maybe, you know, it's unfair sometimes to review Pixar movies because their reputation and their legacy is so amazing and so incredible. Onward is a good time. It's a good movie, kind of a good movie that somehow worked. And then you kind of leave and go, all right, I guess I'm pretty good with Onward. It just felt like a screenplay that a lot of script doctors got to work at the end of the film and put enough setup in the beginning and like broke down to the point where it would definitely work, but probably kind of realized like there's so much in here that had to be in here to get this whole thing to work, that in itself it's sort of a flawed narrative, in that like the whole idea of this story is most likely not a great idea. But you know, you leave the movie going like, you know what, I did cry, it did make me emotional. I think it said something about families, relationships, and these two brothers. And in that, it's kind of the classic Pixar experience. It's just you don't even really get that for most of it. You're getting kind of a quarter or a half of a Pixar movie experience in a big animated movie package. So if you have seen Onward and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.